Okay, welcome back. This is episode 2 of ReThink. Now, in the first episode, we talked about the Bible and how we read it, and how we think about it, and how we interact with it as God's Word, as His communication with us, and maybe some ways to rethink how we approach it and how historically believers and followers of God have approached it. But in this episode, I want to talk to you about prayer. Now, before we begin, I'll show you this. This is one of the books that has influenced me the most on prayer. It's a book by Tim Keller, literally, called Prayer. And what I love is it talks so much about prayer, not just as a concept, but as in a practice. And so here's an example for me. I love to get a cup of coffee with someone. So whether we're at a coffee shop or McDonald's or sitting in an office or my house or whatever, there's something about sharing a drink with someone and then talking to them about how their life is, what their hopes and their dreams are. Just in that relaxed environment, you get to the heart of who they are and what's going on in their life. And so I think a lot of the same is true with prayer. I know it is for me. When I am at my dining room table in the morning and I've got my Bible and I read a little bit and then I start talking to God, this book really encouraged me to start thinking about prayer more in the way of it being relational with God. Not in a form where I fold my hands and I'm on my knees and I'm there for 4 hours, but more in a sense of, am I actually connecting with God? Am I being honest with Him about, where I'm at in my life? Did I maybe not understand the Bible reading for that morning and I'm confused about it? So I tell Him that, or I tell Him I'm having a hard time with this or that, and I ask that He would give me wisdom to do other things, or that He might help other people through certain things, or to be with them and comfort them in times of need, whatever it might be. And then another thing I do is I really try to just get super honest before Him. Bring all maybe my doubts or disappointments or expectations, whatever it might be, to Him, so that in the same way I would sit down and talk to my wife, or I would sit down and talk to my parents or best friend or whomever it might be, just always in a state of being honest, because it's always a healthy place to live from. Now, when you think about prayer, here's something I want to encourage you to do. I want you to think about prayer like that. Think about it as a relational conversation. But then too, how do we do that? Well, here's a few encouragements for you, okay? When I read the book Prayer, we had a small group with it, and one of the things Tim Keller talks about is, when you talk to God, kind of insert someone else's name in there to see if how you're talking to God is weird. So one of the examples he used in the book was how sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, I'll use just God's name as a filler. And so I'll say, God, thank you for today. God, I just thank you so much, Father, and you end up saying His name. So he's like, substitute someone else's name in there, like Frank. So Frank, thank you so much for today, Frank. Frank, I just really asked that you would help me, Frank. And so you kind of just find ways that maybe you're praying on autopilot, because that's kind of what that is. And that really convicted me, and it helped me to begin to really think about what I was saying instead of just maybe doing it on autopilot. Another thing is to use language with God that you use in your day-to-day life. And so I know that a lot of times in Christian culture, we can get used to speaking kind of this Christianese, right? These words that are just maybe used in our subculture, but maybe we don't actually use in our day-to-day life. And so, maybe you use the phrase hedge of protection, or, you use a lot of maybe strange phrases. Well, do you use that in your everyday conversation? Because chances are, when we use those things in prayer, sometimes it's more out of a place of habit rather than out of a place of meaning and deep connection with God. So those are just a few kind of practical things that you can do. But the biggest thing is going back to that, how you think about prayer. I want you to rethink it. Maybe don't just do it out of a place of being on autopilot. Instead, really fight for connecting with God, like you're sitting down with Him over a cup of coffee and just being honest about where you are and what you need Him to do with your heart, and how you need Him to change it, and how maybe you just are bringing it all before Him and you don't know what to do with it, but He does. Anyways, that's my encouragement for you today on how to rethink prayer.